Welcome back to the V2 channel, and today, as you can see, obviously we're in the London store, and I start the video by the mouthpiece cabinet because the subject of today's video is that of the unsung heroes of the mouthpiece world. So we're always talking about Jody Jazz, Theo Wanny, perhaps Selma, and some other brands. These are the big guns of the mouthpiece world. But perhaps we don't put enough spotlight on some of those slightly smaller companies that do produce excellent mouthpieces, and that's what today's video is about. So if we move in this direction here, on my table of dreams here, we have 6 selected mouthpieces, which I'm going to talk about in brief and demonstrate. Let's introduce them briefly. I've actually played some of these in a very recent video where I played 14 mouthpieces against a backing track. Thanks to you guys if you tuned into that one and hung around to the end. Today, well, we've got 6 out of 14, so what's that? It's about 40% length, I suppose. But actually, there are some variations. You may see some mouthpieces that or some brands that I utilize in that video, but today I've got some variation models within those brands. So let's start on the right here. I'm going to start with this one. This is the Superial mouthpiece, the Alexander Superial Jazz model. Beautiful hard rubber mouthpiece in this two-tone, almost sort of maroon type color. It really is an absolute beauty aesthetically. Does it sound beautiful? We shall find out in a minute. So that's the first one. Then I'm going to move on to an Otto Link metal. It's the only metal one I'm going to be playing today. This is a Super Tone Master, and it is the new V model, which I shall talk about in just a second. Great. And then the third one's going to be a 10M fan mouthpiece. Now, in the video I put out recently of the 14 pieces, I believe I played a celebration piece. This is the Showtime model, so let's see how this one differs. Another great mouthpiece, as you can see, hard rubber. In fact, the rest are all hard rubber. And then we've got a Drake here. I played a Drake in that recent mouthpiece video. This one is a different model. It's the Reso. You can just see that on the side there, Reso. So a slightly different chamber, a Reso chamber, if you like. 2 more to go. Then I'm going to play a JDX Reso mouthpiece. I've got a couple of things to say about this, which I shall save for later. So it's going to be interesting when we get onto that piece, slightly brighter piece. And then finally, an Aizen LS 7-star. Great. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Start with the Alexander, and let's see how we get on. Beautiful. So this is really interesting, actually, an interesting start point for me, because I played this mouthpiece in the video that I've been mentioning a couple of times, and I struggled with it in that video with the 14 pieces. It was actually a different model, and I think there was possibly just a slight issue with that mouthpiece, and I found it a bit stuffy before, even though the sound was still very pleasant and what have you. But this one right here is absolutely beautiful. It's a 7-star. It's got that lovely fat core sound. It's what I would call a really standard traditional jazz sound, where you just want to go off in a jazz direction with it and it will sail away with you beautifully. I would say probably if you had to really push it and play in a funkier, brighter style, it does have that edge, but it wouldn't cut through as much as some other pieces that are more suited to that style. But just in terms of an overall sort of beauty of sound and beauty throughout the entire range, from the bottom B flat, which I played there, up to some top stuff, it's a really cracking piece. Lovely stuff. So quite a different experience playing on this versus the Alexander. It's amazing actually when you go onto from the chunkier sound of the Alexander to this, how much difference you can feel in a piece, whereby the sound on this Otto Link is so much more kind of penetrating. It's got much more of a sort of singular sound and focus to it. An obvious brightness, but it's not a brashness. To me, it sounds very pleasant sat here in the room. Be interesting to see how it comes across. As always, I listen to these things with slightly gritted teeth, thinking, does it sound the same as how I experienced it in the room at the time? But to me, it's got that classic Link sound, and yeah, that sort of soaring tone quality. And just a couple of points about this mouthpiece, in that it is, as mentioned before, the new V model. So there have been some changes at the Babbitt factory in Elkhart, where these come from. Such a classic, iconic factory with so much just history involved in terms of the Otto Links and Mayors that have come from there over the years. But what they've done recently, Steve and the factory, is they've revamped all their machines. The forging dies have been changed such that what they were doing before was, with the previous forging dies, over decades of use, they gradually start producing mouthpieces that have like slightly larger chambers in them because the machinery wears out. And as a result, you don't get fractional changes every day, but you wouldn't notice it. It's one of those things where it just accumulates over time. And then when you address the machinery in the factory and sort of dial it back to where it needs to be, it's amazing how things can just click back into place. And I think there's some really beautiful examples of mouthpieces now coming out of that factory. And the V that you get on this mouthpiece signifies that it is one of the latest versions, and it's producing a very nice, pure sound, as hopefully demonstrated there. Cool, so this is the 10M fan. This time I have got a Showtime in that recent video that I keep referring to, played the Celebration, which is also a great 10M fan mouthpiece. Another USA-made mouthpiece, very distinctive with the 3 bands there. I think it looks really cool. Made from nice, high-quality hard rubber. And the thing for me that all the 10M fan mouthpieces have in common, which makes them great, and this isn't just tenor, but alto, soprano, baritone as well, is that they have a really obvious fat sound. It's kind of like the Alexander thing again. It's a very broad core, very pleasing to play in a kind of jazz style. Perhaps a little more resistance than some of those other mouthpieces that I mentioned at the head of the video, the likes of Theos and Jodis that can be so sparky with their aerodynamics where everything is so responsive. With these, there's a little bit more of a th behind the sound, which I know so many of you love because that is that kind of classic jazz sound, that resistance which you get. So it's actually an enjoyable aspect of these mouthpieces. But just to return back to the sort of the central tonal characteristic, just very pleasing and beautiful throughout the range as well. Don't know what keys I was moving through there. Anyway, yeah, a lot of fun with this one. It speaks so beautifully. So we're onto the Drake Reso chamber here, and it certainly does resonate. Throwback to the Reso chambers coming from the Reso mouthpieces coming from the Babbitt factory again. Shout out to the Babbitt guys. But this one's great. One of my favorite Drake pieces. Again, there's a nice fatness and core there. When you lay back on it, you hear that air, you feel that airiness in the sound. So you've got lots of scope, you've got the featheriness. When you push it, it brightens up a bit without becoming a sharp sound. Again, just sounds great through the range on the tenor. Really enjoyable. I think it's interesting when you play in, like, it's really nice acoustic here. You can feel the resonance in the room. Everything sounds great to an extent. I think it's one of those mouthpieces where you just, for me, I know I love playing it solo. I think when you get into certain contexts, loud bands, a lot more piercing instruments, that's when all those warm qualities probably disappear a little bit if you were trying to project a little bit, which is a point I made about one of the other ones. That can be a slight drawback with the warmer sounding mouthpieces. They sound great by themselves. You try and play them in a context with big loud instruments, bright sounding instruments, and then you just lose a bit of that quality. That's probably the only criticism, but it has a purpose. Perhaps you wouldn't use it for that purpose. You would use it for other things, in which case it sounds great just played in a straight ahead kind of jazz style. So this is the new 3.0 version of the JDX mouthpiece by Reso. And The Jody Jazz Factory, Jody Espina, has taken over Reso mouthpieces since they were made, for decades, just under their own name. And now Jody has taken over. He's doing a really great job with these mouthpieces. The quality control has improved. He's made some little design modifications, changed the material. This mouthpiece looks great. It's finished beautifully, and it's got a really well-measured, powerful sound. Out of all of these, you can hear it as the brightest sound. That is exactly what it is trying to do. I wanted to throw a brighter mouthpiece into the mix. And if we look inside this mouthpiece, there's a lot going on. It's got quite an interesting internal profile, really. It really narrows inside. I'm not going to show you that because we're seeing a lot of my saliva, so I'll just keep it to myself. But it really slants inwards. It's really interesting. And you can hear the sound, how focused it is. Look, I'll show you very briefly. There we go. Anyway, right. It's a cutting sound. I don't think it's so much more of a sort of all-round jazz sound. Incidentally, when you hear the little bells going off like that, this is a V2 video, so there's a little bit more of a casual arrangement going on here. But perhaps you'll enjoy the background music going on, which we normally cut it out when we're doing our slightly more polished original YouTube channel videos. Anyway, for this one here, let's return back to this JDX mouthpiece. Great job, so responsive. It doesn't have so much of an obvious baffle, it's just more that the chamber's really squeezed, which is why we get that really directional sound. And as you can hear there as well, I did try to drop it back so you can hear those layers in the sound. When you really drop the air back, you can hear that there's a sort of breathiness in the sound, but its natural characteristic and tendency is to give a really sort of strident, powerful sound. So finishing up with one of the, well, it's sounding quite similar to some of the others I played there, that lovely rounded sound of really, actually the first four, to be honest with you. I think the JDX is the one that stands out as being slightly different in terms of its character. But this one here, I've just played on an Aizen LS mouthpiece. I used it in that video that I did recently that I've mentioned a couple of times. And during that video, I really enjoyed the sound of it. It's got that darkness to it, a sort of certain silkiness in the sound, a very obvious core. You can push it and get an extra brightness and contemporary kind of sound, which works for me because it's the kind of playing I do a lot of. It's beautifully made, exquisite hard rubber with a lovely engraving on the top there. So it's an expensive premium mouthpiece, but to me it has a premium voice to it. So again, at the top of the video I mentioned this is about those unsung heroes, underrated mouthpieces, or ones that aren't talked about so much, because we're always talking about the Jodys and the Theos and all the rest of it. But sometimes we need to talk about these smaller mouthpiece companies who are doing a great job, Aizen being one of them. Just to return back to Babbitt, not a smaller company, it's a really well-known company with all that history I mentioned, but I just wanted to showcase their new links because they're doing a great job with their latest mouthpieces. So that pretty much wraps it up for me. I've handpicked these mouthpieces because I think that they're really good mouthpieces. I mean, all the mouthpieces we sell here are good, but these are particular favorites of mine on tenor sax, and I just wanted to highlight them all in a solo a cappella style. So hopefully I've done that for you. Hopefully this has been useful, and perhaps if you guys think it's useful, we'll do it again with another instrument, baritone, sopranino, soprano. alto. I shall see you on another video soon.